Hello, and welcome to the Reason for Faith podcast, where we offer answers to questions on God, Jesus Christ, and the Bible. I'm your host, Mark Mikołajczuk. Today's lesson is going to be about eschatology, the end times, revelation, the second coming of Christ, the rapture. What do these things mean? Why teach eschatology? Why even teach about the end times? I believe that it's very necessary, even though it's very controversial, and the goal of this study will be not only to seek out truth, but also to seek out the errors that some beliefs of eschatology have. Now, when we think of the end times, we think of the second coming of Christ, prophecy, new heaven, new earth, eternal punishment, judgment day, the rapture. Now, in this introduction to the end times, I just want to familiarize everyone with a few terms and positions when it comes to eschatology. We mainly have three main viewpoints when it comes to the end times. We have premillennialism, amillennialism, and postmillennialism. And under premillennialism, you have the most popular view, dispensational premillennialism. Now, just because I say it's the most popular does not mean I think it's the one that most coincides with what Scripture teaches. But dispensational premillennialism basically teaches that there is a rapture, a secret rapture of the church, and then there's 7 years or 3.5 years of tribulation, depending on which version you believe. And then Jesus is going to come, Armageddon is going to take place, and Jesus will set up an earthly kingdom that's going to last 1,000 years. Then after this 1,000 years, there's going to be a judgment, and then the new heaven and the new earth are going to be ushered in. Now, amillennialism teaches that the millennium reign, or the 1,000-year reign, is a symbolic number, it's not literal, and that we are in that millennial reign now, and that when Jesus comes back, we will be transformed, judgment will take place, everything will happen at one single event in history. There won't be any 7 years, any gap, any millennial reign of 1,000 years. Everything will happen at his second coming, and that's it. Now, the postmillennial belief is that the church is going to usher in this moment in time where everyone is going to start getting saved, people are going to start accepting Christ, and the world is just going to start getting better and better and better. Now, for this study, I mainly want to focus on the dispensational premillennialism, since that's the most popular, and amillennialism, since that's the one that's most often attacked as being symbolic and not interpreting Scripture literally, and these are the two that are constantly going back and forth. Now, one of the main terms people usually think of when they think of the end times is the word rapture. And you've probably seen this in movies and films where people suddenly just disappear, and this is supposed to be Christians that have been caught up to Christ at his return, or 7 years before his return, depending on which version you believe. Now, before we get off into all that, I wanted to do a quick introduction because I think it's important that we don't get too far ahead of ourselves. First of all, we shouldn't approach this study looking at the most difficult scriptures. Most people want to jump off into Revelation and start interpreting Revelation and thinking, oh, this is where we start because this is what it's talking about. We have to be careful when we do that because Revelation is a very tricky book, and we can't just dive off into Revelation thinking we're going to interpret everything perfectly. So I think one of the best things to do when we start this study is to start with the simplest scriptures first. And of course, I also think that the best authority on that would be to look at what Jesus had to say about this and what the New Testament writers had to say about this to see where the starting point for them was when it came to the end times. So that's what we're going to do in part 2 of our end time study. We're going to look at the 2 ages that are taught. Many times Scripture says this age and the age to come. And we're going to try to understand what does that mean exactly when it comes to the end times. So join us for part 2, and I hope you enjoy the study further.